Mwalio.
8, procedural motion, reduction of publication period of a bill.
The Chair, Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm moving a procedural motion on the reduction of publication period of a bill that, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 120, that this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, from 7 days to 1 day, Mr. Speaker. And the reason for this, Mr. Speaker, is that yesterday we extensively debated the supplementary estimates. We will actually also have an opportunity to do that today as we move the appropriations bill. But the reason for reduction, Mr. Speaker, is that the majority of members who belong to various departmental committees have been interacting with the various MDAs that they oversight. And Mr. Speaker, the urgency that has come from these committees is that majority of these MDAs currently are idle. And therefore we need to unlock the resources, number one, to action them to continue offering service to the Kenyan people, but also number two, Mr. Speaker, that this appropriations bill that we are moving today, Mr. Speaker, is unlocking a lot of money that would otherwise be going out in terms of in the pockets of the Kenyan people by unlocking, for example, the pending bills. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am seeking that this House, that we reduce the publication period from the usual 7 days to 1 day, because members already have interacted with the content of the appropriations bill, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, my prayer. And I request Honorable Atadi to second.
Andy.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I second. And Honorable Speaker, let me just add something on top of what the Chair of Budget has said. Chair, Speaker, we have about 3 months to the end of this financial year. And Chair, you realize that we have already started discussing BPS. And we need, first of all, to do away with this, clear this supplementary budget, and then we can now focus on BPS. And secondly, Chair, Speaker, you're aware that the country is facing a lot of problems, especially the drought issues. Some of the resources that we have placed in this supplementary budget are going to help our people in the areas of drought, and also the insecurity in the North Rift. So, Chair, these are some of the reasons that we feel this publication needs to be reduced to 1 day, and I second. Thank you.
Order, honorable members, I propose the question. Interest in debating this, I'll put the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, from 7 days to 1 day. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order. Yes, Honorable Dr. Nyikal, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me opportunity. I want to raise a matter which I believe is really important for this House. Mr. Speaker, we have no access from the main Parliament building to the Continental House offices. The route which we used to go through the police now is restricted. Through County Hall, it is restricted. Now members have to go all the way to Professional Center. And it does look to me like the gate across is ready and we go through. So, Mr. Speaker, I think me and I believe other people must be feeling the stress of having to walk all the way back and forth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is the Honorable Patrick Makar in the House? I direct you as the Chair of Development Issues in the Commission to ensure that members are not inconvenienced in going to their offices, going to the gym, and going to Continental House.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm quite sorry what happened this afternoon. I've just received the same complaints from Honorable Wangwe. And Mr. Chair, I spoke to the security manager of the institution, and we have agreed there was a security itch yesterday, and that's why it was locked. But we have agreed this afternoon that gate that we used to use going to Continental House will be opened and availed to members of parliament. There will be a guard. So, Honorable Nyekal and all members, from today, this afternoon, and tomorrow, it will be easy and accessible for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next order.
Order number 9, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and their application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2023, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, second reading.
Chairman, Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to move the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the members for the very robust engagement that we had yesterday in considering the estimates. And because prior to having an opportunity to serve in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, possibly I could also not understand a lot of what happens in terms of processes. And some members could be wondering, then what is it that we passed yesterday and what are we doing today? Mr. Speaker, what we passed yesterday are the estimates, and for that to become now law, Mr. Speaker, we need to put it in a bill, which, as you said earlier, Mr. Speaker, it is just the reflection of the issues that we were discussing yesterday. There are no changes other than semantics, but we need now to actualize that by putting it into an appropriations bill, and that is the bill that we are, Mr. Speaker, dealing with today. Mr. Speaker, I'll just say a few things because we had an opportunity to say much more yesterday, so that even the time that could be there, other members who never got an opportunity yesterday can get an opportunity to say something about the supplementary estimates and supplementary appropriations bill today. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is that in this administration, and even as we craft the budget, as the house that makes the budget, we are focusing more on production. Mr. Speaker, for us to be able to solve the myriad of problems that our economy is going through, Mr. Speaker, our focus must be on production. And the way we are looking at production as the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and Mr. Speaker, even what we have been able to table in this House, and what we are currently debating today, our focus has primarily been on production. And Mr. Speaker, on production, on the onset, we are focusing on the primary production, and the primary production is that what deals with raw materials and production of things that are raw in nature. And Mr. Speaker, that is why we have given a lot of resources and a lot of weight in production based in agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, I would request that members improve upon this issue in a robust manner. When we talk about agriculture, sometimes we confuse agriculture with farming. Mr. Speaker, in the agricultural value chain, farming accounts for just around 20 to 25%. The activities that farmers do in their farms, sometimes we confuse that to agriculture. That is just one segment within the value chain of agriculture, which is purely farming. And Mr. Speaker, there are other processes within the value chain of agriculture. Warehousing is part of agriculture. Transportation is part of agriculture. Breeding and blending is part of agriculture. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, our focus is on the entire value chain so that we can have as much value being retained around in terms of within the country, and especially having a lot of value pushed to where the farmer is, so that, Mr. Speaker, the farmer's sweat and the farmer's hard work that can be commensurated with the kind of value they get out of farming, which is within the value chain of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, also, our focus number 2 is on the secondary production. The secondary production, Mr. Speaker, is in regards to adding value to whatever we have, whatever raw material that we have, whatever raw production that we do, in terms of how we can add value into that. And Mr. Speaker, that is primarily manufacturing. Manufacturing has various stages, but you have looked at it as a block, Mr. Speaker, from very basic production in terms of secondary production within manufacturing to, Mr. Speaker, our focus is on how, even as we add value in terms of primary production, how much more value can we retain by also incorporating secondary production, Mr. Speaker, that is purely manufacturing in nature. The other one is tertiary, and tertiary, Mr. Speaker, is in regards to the services around the first 2 that I gave. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to draw the attention of this House to how our economy currently is. Our economy, as it currently operates, Mr. Speaker, is that the drivers of our economy is actually the public sector. It is the government. And the other number 2, Mr. Speaker, the driver of our economy, active arm of the economy, where if you look at the growth on fintech, the growth in service industry, Mr. Speaker, we have had now the productive side leapfrogging the facilitative side, where we have very innovative people. We have banks now that are now in our phones. We have very robust fintech products like M-Pesa. We have a growing service sector in terms of insurance, in terms of banking. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to be aware of the fact that the facilitative side of the economy should serve the productive side. And when we have the facilitative side of the economy growing much faster than the real productive side, then there is a problem. Because, Mr. Speaker, when I send money from my phone to the other person, there is no value I create. The only thing I do, or that app does, is to facilitate efficiency within the economy. And therefore, we need to also focus on the real production. And that production is what we have focused on in terms of agriculture, in terms of manufacturing, so that the facilitative side can grow in tandem with the real productive side of the economy. And what we have done, Mr. Speaker, in regards to that, is that we have also looked at the enablers. As we talk about production, as we talk about adding value to our gross production, what are the enablers? And that is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, we were able to salvage 10 billion Kenya shillings from whatever area we could save to push that money into roads so that we can have the economy running smoothly. Because the essence of roads, Mr. Speaker, is not just for social travel. The essence of road and other infrastructure is that the economy runs on them. And, Mr. Speaker, that is why we put money onto the roads. Because whatever we carry from our farms, whatever we carry from our industries, majority of it, Mr. Speaker, passes through our roads. And that is the same reason that we unlocked 12 billion Kenya shillings from the annuity fund so that we can push the same resources into making sure that the contractors go back to site to finish on our roads projects. Mr. Speaker, the reason why we exist as this House, as an arm of government, and the other reason that every other civil servant exists, from the highest to the top, to those at the lower cadre, we do not exist to serve the machinery of government. The machinery of government does not exist to self-serve. This machinery exists to serve the needs of the Kenyan people. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are focusing on having a lean government, because the government is the machinery for service, so that we can push as much resources into the areas that touches on the common person, the people who labor, the people, Mr. Speaker, who work hard, and the people who pay taxes, the very dignified citizens of the Republic of Kenya. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, we have looked at specific areas and targets. And I want to enumerate some of them that are already in the appropriations bill, Mr. Speaker, that we are passing today. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is the appropriations bill. We are unlocking a very robust project, which is the coolers project. And these coolers, Mr. Speaker, they have been mapped to go to every constituency represented here, and especially every constituency that has got dairy farming that happens. We have allocated Kenya shillings 500 million, which is counterpart funding, because we have the Polish government providing 9.5 billion to that project, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we are going to have a 10 billion project that will supply coolers to our farmers as part of value addition within the agricultural value chain. Mr. Speaker, this is a very robust program. The government of Kenya, through this appropriations bill, is only contributing 5% counterpart funding, which is already provided. Number two, some of the areas that I wish to mention among the many. Mr. Speaker, through food security, it is a shame that our economy is agrarian in nature. If you ask any child in any business class, even in class 1, our economy is deemed to be an economy that rides on agriculture. Mr. Speaker, it is an oxymoron and a paradox that an economy that is based on agriculture has challenges in feeding its people. And Mr. Speaker, this cuts across many economies across. Majority of the economies that are premised on agriculture has problems feeding their people. And actually the economies that focuses on other productions other than agriculture have problems of overfeeding. Mr. Speaker, that is a paradox. And to reverse that paradox, Mr. Speaker, we have pushed resources into specific areas within food production. Number one, there is a project that had been abandoned in Tana River, Mr. Speaker, undertaken by Tarda. Mr. Speaker, we have allocated 500 million Kenya shillings that will go into production of rice, because there is no way we can perpetuate importation of rice when we have capacity to unlock another very serious project, which is called Burawan. This is also an abandoned project, which we have pushed 300 million Kenya shillings to be able to activate that project, Mr. Speaker, to spur up rice production in our country. That rice production, Mr. Speaker, will also be happening in Tana River. And I want to confirm to this House that within our country, some of the areas that we see as far-flung, Mr. Speaker, they could be the saviors of our country, just like what Los Angeles did to the US. Mr. Speaker, some of these areas are productive. They only need some simple mechanization for them to add into the basket, and especially the basket Kenya, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto promised to the people of Kisumu and Homa Bay. Mr. Speaker, there are always challenges when the very dignified citizens of Kenya move from the mainland into the islands, Mr. Speaker, within Lake Victoria. They have challenges with very unsafe boats. Mr. Speaker, the President promised that the people of that area will have a ferry to be able to facilitate them, Mr. Speaker, to move from the mainland into the islands. And Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to this House that through this appropriations bill, we have allocated Kenya shillings 300 million for the purchase of ferries, Mr. Speaker, to be able to facilitate trade and movement within Homa Bay and Kisumu counties through Lake Victoria. Mr. Speaker, through the same visit that the President had, he got, Mr. Speaker, opinions from the leaders who are actually in this House. And I want to confirm that we have put in the initial budget to be able to build Homa Bay Kapude airstrip, Mr. Speaker. And that will also be starting very soon, because that money is already in the appropriations bill. And I can say Dr. Nikal is resonating with what I'm enumerating. Mr. Speaker, also, in terms of creating value by having the young people of Kenya engaged in productive areas, we have also allocated through this appropriations bill Kenya shillings 1.3 billion, Mr. Speaker, to be able to facilitate additional infrastructure within Athi River EPZ A. Mr. Speaker, we already have many investors lined up who are willing to invest in garment and apparel sector. And Mr. Speaker, you know for sure that the economies that have actually advanced even up to now, their basis of manufacturing was the basic manufacturing. And basic manufacturing, Mr. Speaker, cuts across apparels, garments, and areas around clothing. And Mr. Speaker, we have facilitated EPZ to build more sheds for the investors who are already lined up to employ the majority of the Kenyan youth who will be engaged in those EPZ sheds. Mr. Speaker, just for the clarification for members who were not here yesterday, I want to reinforce that we have been in talks with the Treasury, and they have already released Kenya shillings 14 billion to NGCDF board. Mr. Speaker, by close of this week, we anticipate that every constituency should be having not less than 45 million to be able to disburse bursaries. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, I'll talk about GAF. I can hear lovely voices from the very able women reps. I'll talk about it. In this appropriations bill, Mr. Speaker, we have also added two things in regards to NGCDF and GAF. And starting with GAF, the women reps in this house, they are very aware that their activities have been handicapped in the past because of coordinators and because the monies that are already provided, we needed some funds to unlock that money. We have provided enough money for that in that regard, in terms of facilitating the unlocking of the monies that are already provided in the main budget. That has already happened through this appropriations bill. And in regards to NGCDF, Mr. Speaker, there are over 200 constituencies which have arrears for the last financial year to a tune of 12 million per constitutions bill. When the President assents to it by Friday, we are going to unlock the 12 million per constituency which are in assent of this bill by His Excellency the President. We have provided Kenya shillings 2.9 billion in that regard, and we have actually factored in entirety the entire areas in terms of NGCDF. Mr. Speaker, as I come to the finish, the other very important matters that we have done, I talked about the teachers yesterday. We have passed Article 223 expenditure in regards to the teachers' recruitment, which is ongoing in terms of JSS, junior secondary schools. And we have also allocated, Mr. Speaker, through this appropriations bill, an additional 9 billion Kenya shillings for capitation for JSS. And we have done this because JSS and CBC is that we do not want to push the burden to parents. And the President gave us direct commitments that he wants the JSS learners and the parents not to carry extra burden. And therefore, the government is capitalizing every learner through capitation, monies that we have already input in this appropriations bill to a tune of 9 billion Kenya shillings. Mr. Speaker, there are many other areas which I will leave for the members to get an opportunity to comment on, and I wish to move, Mr. Speaker, and if you permit, I can call the seconder. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to request Honorable Dan Mwashako to second this appropriations bill.
Honorable Mwashako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to second this appropriation bill. Honorable Speaker, I first want to say that we know at the moment there is so little activity going on in the country because without government spending, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Speaker, I am glad that this afternoon we have an opportunity to debate and even conclude on this supplementary bill that will unlock funding to government projects, that will unlock funding to MDAs, so that government can implement projects that in the same as the implement project, Honorable Speaker, will have an opportunity to have money in circulation, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, my chair has done justice to this topic. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that this supplementary budget of this first supplementary budget under the new administration has taken care of about 3 items that are so important where the country is at the moment. Honorable Speaker, there is 6 billion shillings that has been allocated to go into drought mitigation, which at the moment you know the situation the country is facing. We have almost every corner of this country, we have a drought that is ravaging every area, and Kenyans are suffering because they're not able to do their normal, get the normal food, and even the food baskets have been affected. Some of us come from ASAL areas, Honorable Speaker, and therefore we are calling upon government. The immediate, this supplementary budget is passed and signed into law, we expect that suffering Kenyans need to get this food, and therefore all the apparatus of government that are concerned in the distribution must move in fast to save lives, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we know the confusion that is going on right now under junior secondary. This supplementary budget has allocated 9.2 billion shillings to go and sort out the mess we find in the junior secondary space, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we know capitation in this country for our students in schools. In primary school, definitely this capitation is very, now have sufficient funds, Honorable Speaker, to make them viable, Honorable Speaker, because we have primary schools, Honorable Speaker, that have very low enrollment, and therefore the primary school capitation is never enough to run the schools, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, without saying much, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that the most important thing that this government needs to give us is value for money. And therefore, we want to call upon all the implementation agencies and ministries to make sure that every coin that this August House appropriates is used according to what is envisaged in this appropriation bill, Honorable Speaker. We know that there's been a lot of wastage, we know there's been corruption, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, for Kenyans to get value for the money that this House is appropriating, we are calling at projects and programs of government to make above board, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I sit, I'm also excited about the opportunity that this appropriation bill gives to CDF, the money that has been allocated to CDF. I know the arrears, most constituencies had arrears for the last financial year, 2021-2022, and now that 2.9 billion has been allocated to go into unlocking the arrears under NGCDF, it's something that is welcomed. And I know women reps are also excited about the money that is in this appropriation bill. And therefore, as a country, I know now we are set to move 4 months to the next, about 3 months to the next budget. The only thing that we call upon, Honorable Speaker, in the next budget as a House, we must be asking ourselves how balanced these budgets are, so that then we achieve what we call a balanced growth across the country, Honorable Speaker. With those many words, Honorable Speaker, I stand to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Before I propose the question, Honorable members, I wish to acknowledge in the public gallery the presence of students from Mwiki Primary School, Ruiru in Kiambu, students from Molo Academy Boys Secondary School, Molo in Nakuru. On your behalf and on my own behalf, I welcome the students to the House of Parliament. Honorable members, I now propose the question. Order, Honorable Atandi. Honorable Atandi. I propose the question that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read a second time. Do you want to debate or to put the question? I've noted the mood. Let me hear your leaders, then I put the question. One day.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with you that the mood of the House is fairly clear. But that notwithstanding, let me just add 1 or 2 words to this debate. Mr. Speaker, this bill is obviously a matter of, if you ask me, a formality. That for you to give effect to the supplementary estimates, you must actually pass this bill. Otherwise, the approval of the estimates becomes something done in vain. and therefore I will support it. But Mr. Speaker, there is something we need to take more seriously. Because I listened keenly to the chairman talk about value addition and manufacturing and supportive. We must, as a matter of priority going forward, even as we pass this bill, as we address the issue of the cost of energy, we shall never make any progress in terms of developing our manufacturing sector. As we speak, it is almost common knowledge that the energy sector has been captured by cartels. Cartels that are little, Mr. Speaker. Little. And these cartels have been able to transit from one regime to another, to another, and to another. I would be surprised that as we speak, they have already captured this new regime. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying I've got evidence, but I wouldn't be surprised. These cartels are dangerous creatures. And therefore, as a house, we must guard the courage to deal with them once and for all, if only to rein in the spiraling cost of energy. There is no way we are ever going to be competitive as a country vis-a-vis other countries. You remember the other day, in fact yesterday, there was a demonstration, massive demonstration, by Kenyan traders. And they are right. Those Kenyan traders were right to demonstrate. But we must go to the root cause of their demonstration. Their demonstration is not just about Chinese. It is because of the fact that even if they are to sell the goods they have brought from China, there is no way they are going to make money if the cost of energy remains the way it is. In a sense, energy determines everything else. The cost of energy determines everything else in the economy. And therefore, even as to condemn the Chinese, also let's look inwards. Yes, let's look inwards and see where we have contributed to this mess. And I'm happy Honorable Gikaria is agreeing with me, the chairman of Energy Emeritus. Yes, the cartels in the energy sector must be dealt with ruthlessly. I am aware that there are managers and players and people in the energy sagas who are doing what we would call the internal trading. They are doing business irregularly with their reports here, damning reports. No, these days I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that my office has been fully capacitated, is fully enabled to undertake very serious exercises, including forensic audits, Mr. Speaker. Very soon I'll be tabling damning reports here on how people who are in charge of these energy sagas are doing business regularly with those very sagas. They are basically part of the cartels I'm talking about. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must also actually understand that those Chinese companies, like the one you're talking about on Thika Road, they're just the faces. The real owners, you know, are Kenyans. The real owners are Kenyans, and some of them are even here in this house. Yes, Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I support. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Wandai. I now give to the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Maybe just to correct Honorable Pio Wandai, the people demonstrating yesterday over Chinese market and allowed the Chinese to have unfettered access issue. This morning we had a meeting with representatives of the Nyamakima River Road traders that was chaired by none other than the Deputy President and included all agencies of government, including KEBS, KRA, Anti-Counterfeit Authority, and all other relevant agencies. And we are looking, government is working hard to look into solutions to that issue. Honorable Speaker, we did pass the Budget and Appropriations Report yesterday, which is now what has enabled us to prepare this appropriations bill. And there isn't much that we can say other than what we said yesterday in terms of the budget making process and approval of this appropriations bill. Upon passage of this bill, Honorable Speaker, we shall be able now to access the monies as and when His Excellency the President assents to the bill to become the Appropriations Act of Supplementary 1. And governments, agencies and departments and ministries will now be able to access funds to be able to spur the economic growth that we were speaking about yesterday. But significantly, Honorable Speaker, yesterday as we passed the report, there was also reports of the cabinet meeting of yesterday morning. And I have seen a number of media houses misreport a resolution by cabinet. And because we are the budget-making house, we have a responsibility to correct misreporting by the media. And Honorable Speaker, some of these media houses have become notorious. This afternoon, the Chief Whip has just tabled reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of a number of constituencies for the financial year ended 2021. Reports will be tabled before this House, hopefully by mid next year, after the audits that will be done after you are taking office. Please, don't allow yourself to be blackmailed or to be intimidated by any person in the media. I had occasion, some of them are calling members of parliament, oh, we have seen an audit report of your NGCDF committee. I can see already members nodding, so a number of them have been called. And there are issues that you need to talk to us about. Members of parliament are not accounting officers of NGCDF, and they have no business. If there are issues to do with the audit of NGCDF, those are issues to be dealt with by the accounting officers that are the fund account managers in your respective constituencies. Therefore, don't allow some of these cheap media houses to blackmail you for small bribes so that they don't. Tell them, like I told the one who was approaching some members, I told them, go on by that the government of Kenya now is raising the debt ceiling. And far from it, I don't know whether it's because the writer does not understand that the debt anchor simply relates to a debt to GDP ratio that defines the optimal or desirable debt carrying capacity of an economy. And it's that simple. And we are saying our debt carrying capacity, our optimal or desired debt carrying capacity, will now be anchored at 55% of GDP in net present value terms. Maybe it's too much economics for some of these writers and journalists. It is the People newspaper I am talking about. They either MediaMax, the same media house that has the famed Kamehameha FM, that the other day was fighting Our Lady members of parliament, telling them that they are wearing vitenges.
Honorable Wandai, what is the problem?
He wants to defend.
The Speaker, just need your guidance on this. No, Honorable Chimunga is my friend. But then, you know, under the standing orders, we are not supposed to impute improper motive on persons who cannot have the chance to defend themselves for this House without following the normal process. And you know, newspapers, media houses are legal persons, the Speaker. And therefore, would I be in order to ask that you ask the Honorable Leader of Majority to approach this matter in the correct manner by following the standing orders as clearly indicated there. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I understand the Leader of Minority has to defend the ownership of that particular media house and the persons who own it by virtue of the owners being the chairman or outgoing chairman of the Azimio Council of Elders or something like that. But truth be told, if a journalist in a media house doesn't understand simple things, let us just use this opportunity on the floor of parliament, because we have some fiduciary duty also to put things in the right perspective.
You've made your point.
And therefore, Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to state for the benefit of the country that the debt anchor that the cabinet resolved on yesterday, currently as we speak, our debt to GDP ratio was at 62.7%. With this supplementary budget and this appropriations bill that we are moving today, that has come down now to 60% of GDP. And we are saying our desired and optimal debt to GDP level, we want to anchor it at 55%, so that whenever, as our economy grows, whenever you go above the 55% threshold, then something signals that things are not going all right, and we have to do something even as a house. Today, we are 9.14 trillion against the 10 trillion mark that we put, an absolute figure that basically, if you ask what is the basis of the 10 trillion shillings, is nothing, and it's just a figure. Therefore, it's good for all Kenyans, including those who write and commentate on economic matters, to at least have the courtesy and decency to engage with those who are in the know. And if they can't engage with the National Treasury, I'm sure there are also think houses, economic think houses in this house that they can engage with that would guide them to understand these things, other than misreport things that are misleading to Kenyans. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, allow me to support the passage of this appropriations bill and ask, like we did yesterday, Honorable Speaker, that upon the assent of this bill, that committees of this House, because we have now all been inducted into our work, especially the oversight committees, that we shall take up our work to oversight the implementation of this budget, to ensure that whatever we pass in this House is implemented by government in line with what was intended at the time we did this budget. Because it will not be enough to just say that we are the budget-making House, pass budgets, and leave it then to government ministries and departments to implement as they wish, without meaningful and useful oversight over the ministries. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, we did pass the report yesterday, and that report has certain recommendations. And as I did yesterday, I once again want to challenge our committees. Please go through that report. All the issues, including those issues on Article 223, please let us see our public accounts, public investments, and our departmental committees pick up all the issues that the Budget and Appropriations Committee has been very kind and courteous to guide us on with the recommendations that they have in that report. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
Thank you. I promised you that I'll give to your leaders, then put the question. Honorable members, I now put the question that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read the second time. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and their application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2023, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes. Order number.
Mover, I didn't invite you to reply. I rescind the question. I think you should blame it on Honorable Bukose, who is constantly calling on the Speaker to put the question. Mover, reply briefly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that opportunity.
Yes.
And I implore upon Honorable Dr. Bukose to desist from confusing the Honorable Chair. Honorable Mr. Speaker, as I reply, I just wish to mention one thing that was mentioned by Honorable Opio Wadai, who is a very objective member of Parliament and doing his work in terms of oversight on the cost of electricity and power in this country. There are many considerations that we have to make as a country, as an economy, because the major part of the cost of power and the cost of energy is actually based on demand. When we increase our capacity to absorb extra capacity, currently we have installed capacity of around 3,000 megawatts. Mr. Speaker, for an economy to be able to access cheap power, we, number one, have to make mechanisms of increasing demand for power itself. And the reason I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, is that when you produce less capacity, then in terms of per capita and in terms of per unit, then the cost goes high. If you compare our installed capacity of 3,000 megawatts with that, for example, of South Africa, South Africa has around 64 gigawatts of installed power. When you go to South Korea, it is around 120 gigawatts installed capacity. And therefore, the work we are doing is to increase the demand side of power. Because when you increase the demand side, then the power you produce in bulk has got areas that can be absorbed in. And therefore, unit cost of power then consequently goes down. And I'm sure we are already aligning in regards to that. Mr. Speaker, also, in terms of debt, I also want to add the voice onto that, because yesterday our cabinet set and they made proposals in regards to the debt benchmark. Every country, instead of setting an aggregate figure in terms of the debt ceiling, you know, economy is a moving target. Our GDP keeps on rising. Our production keeps on rising. When you anchor debt in terms of an aggregate figure, then you are not giving credence to the fact that economy is a moving target. Therefore, most of the advanced economies, what they do for fiscal prudence is to put a benchmark that also moves in the tandem of the movement of the economy. And therefore, instead of the aggregate figure, then having a debt to GDP ratio is more preferable, because even the economy changes. And therefore, our debt or the cabinet never approved anything around taking the debt appetite up. It is actually in terms of reducing. We have already demonstrated that we have reduced our deficit currently. We have demonstrated further that through this supplementary budget, we have actually reduced our deficit, fiscal deficit, to 5.7, when actually even IMF have recommended 6.2 and 5.8. But as a responsible government, we have actually reduced that through this appropriations bill to 5.7% of our GDP. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I reply.
Now I can appropriately put the question. That the Supplemental Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read the second time. As members of that opinion say aye, opinion of it.
A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and their application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2023, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes.
Honorable members, before we go to committee, I have some guidance from the chair in relation to proposed amendments to the bill. Honorable members, before the House proceeds to the next order, which is the consideration of the Supplemental Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, in the committee of the whole House, I wish to offer following guidance with respect to amendments proposed by members and the application of the provisions of Article 114(2). Then from consideration during the committee of the whole House on the Supplemental Appropriations Bill 20. As you are aware, Article 114(2) of the Constitution provides that, and I quote, if, in the opinion of the Speaker, a motion makes provision for a matter listed in the definition of a money bill, the Assembly may proceed only in accordance with the recommendation of the relevant committee after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. The imposition of charges on the public fund, the receipt, custody, investment, or issue of public money, and the raising and guaranteeing of any loan or its fund that deals with appropriation of funds is clearly a money bill legislation in the House. Having said that, honorable members, as you will, vote D 1104 waters and vote D the financial year 2022-2023. In view of the foregoing,
Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023. It's a short one, so just be in the House.
2.
Very well. I propose the question that clause 2 be part of the bill. Chair.
Thank you very much. That the first schedule be amended in respect of the vote D1104, State Department for Irrigation, by deleting figure 13,125,000 appearing under water storage and flood control.
Chair, move the amendment
as appearing on the order paper.
Chair, can you please explain?
From the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, after the executive order by the President, some of these votes have been misplaced in the wrong places. So all we did was cleaning up in terms of having the vote being domiciled in the place that it was intended, and especially by taking care of the executive order number 1 that aligned all government departments.
Very well. I propose the question that clause 2
talks of a figure of 200,529,733,488, and I would imagine for the benefit of new members, the amendment that's being done in clause 2 is to change the figures published in the bill to a new figure of 200,729,723,488. And probably the question need to ask, what has been the amendment he has moved on clause 2? Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't want to jump before the gun, but if you look at the second amendment, that the figure is moving from 491 million to 591, and therefore it balances up, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Proceed. Now let me hear.
I refer to the proposed amendment by the Chairman Budget and Appropriation Committee, and I'm just wondering, when we were handling the matter at the committee level, I belong to the Committee on Blue Economy and Irrigation. Already, the said had already been communicated, and we in terms that at the budget level, at the Budget and Appropriation Committee level, is when they are realizing that the executive order was not properly followed. Chair, I also want to just bring to the attention of the House that a number of changes have been introduced in what we had reported as a committee of Blue Economy and Irrigation, and the additional, so much money has been brought in without the consultation of the committee, of the departmental committee. And we are really wondering, as members of the Blue Economy and Irrigation Committee, whether actually we are there to rubber stamp things that are being done without our knowledge, or what is our real role. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've heard you, but the matter is now on the plenary of the House. And I put the question that clause 2 be amended as proposed. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 2 be amended as are of that opinion say aye. Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Does it have an amendment? I propose the question that clause 3 be part of the bill. There's no amendment to it, so therefore I proceed. I now put the question that clause 3 be part of the bill. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of a contrary position say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Clause 4 does not have an amendment. I propose the question that clause 4 be part of the bill. I now put the question that clause 4 be part of the bill. Will as many are as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many are as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Okay. I propose the question that clause 5 be part of the bill. There's an amendment, Chair. Chair Budget. We are on clause 5. And give the Chair appropriate time. He has some business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I wish to move the amendment as it appears on the order paper. And Mr. Speaker, it is the explanation that I gave earlier. And just because I have the mic, it's good that I answer honorable members the other queries they asked in regards to the executive order and alignment. You know, man is to error, and error is to man. Actually, it had also escaped majority of us, and some of these things are checked by our own physical analyst here, and therefore there is no actually other reason other than aligning the vote to the respective agency and the respective vote that should actually be carried in this regard. And therefore, there is no other reason. Secondly, in terms of additional, I want to request the member to also give some latitude, because once you bring in the reports, and actually that is what we did, we relied on the wisdom of the departmental committees. And everywhere you actually amended up to zero sum, we never interfered with all those amendments. However, when we do savings from this area or the other, and especially given the priority projects, then we had no recourse other than to allocate monies into those areas. And as you know, drought mitigation is touching on supplies of food, it is touching on water, it is touching on irrigation. And that is why you see most of the amendments are in that regard. There is no other reason, honorable member, and it's an open book.
Very well. I propose the question that clause 5 be amended as proposed. Leader.
Chair, maybe just for the Honorable Nzengu and members of the Blue Economy and Irrigation Committee, because it's a matter that has already been raised by the leadership of the committee, and maybe just for their comfort, because we were just inducted into committees the other day, and I don't think the chair, budget, and the budget committee has had an opportunity to do what we have done in previous parliaments, to have a session with all chairs of committees under the auspices of the liaison committee. But Honorable Nzengu has a point, just to reassure him, because we have discussed that issue with the chair of the committee, to just allow for now that latitude with the Budget and Appropriations Committee. But in future, it is indeed true what the committee is raising, that matters touching on budget ought to be processed through the relevant departmental committees, so that we don't get things being parachuted into the budget without being interrogated by the committees that oversight those particular departments. And I think the Honorable Nzengu, being a good, not good old man, but a seasoned legislator, and a very seasoned member of that committee, will indulge the budget committee for this time round. Next time, we will ensure that things are done as they should.
Very well. Members, I now put the question that clause 5 be amended as proposed. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 5 be amended, as amended, be part of the bill. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
The schedules. First schedule.
Very well, honorable members. I propose the question that the first schedule be the schedule of the bill. Chair, you have got an amendment on this. The first schedule.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it appears on the order paper, I'm sure members can peruse, and I wish to make that amendment, to table that amendment as proposed in the order paper.
Very well. I propose the question that Schedule 1 be amended as proposed. Very well. I now put the question that Schedule 1 be amended as proposed. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Well, on Macau.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, allow me from the onset to thank the Committee on Budget and Appropriations for giving us ODS, and we are amending the first schedule 1 by deleting the expression Kenya shilling 300 million appearing at a program 07223000, that is general administration, in respect of development estimates, and substituting therefore with the expression Kenya shillings 400 million amendments in the bill thereof. Thank you, Chair.
Very well. Attorney, let me propose the question first. I propose the question that Schedule 1 be amended as proposed by Hon Macau. Let me hear Hon Attorney.
Chair, I just wanted Hon Macau to explain further what is the intention of increasing this development expenditure.
From the onset, I said that I want to thank the Committee of Budget and Appropriations. Chairman, you are all aware that the Bunge Tower has been ongoing. And Mr. Chairman, I thank also the leadership of this House and the Chairman of the Budget and Appropriation Committee that visited the new building. Chairman, you are aware that this building has taken years and years. This commission, the sixth commission, is committed to making that house be occupied. Mr. Chairman, when you look at the pending bills that have been there and that we presented to the same budget committee, Mr. Chair, there are some pending bills. And Mr. Chairman, we are glad that the same committee granted us 300 million. And now we are further seeking for 100 million that we have indicated that 100 million will come from the vote 2042. So, Mr. Chairman, as the Speaker had communicated, that we are not in contravention of the same. So, Mr. Chairman, that's why we felt we should put this amendment so that we have more money. Mr. Chairman, you realize some of our members don't have offices. And by adding this money and paying the pending bills for the various contractors, we will be able to make that Bunge Tower occupiable, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I am sure even the Honorable Atande, who was very fundamental in making PSC get this money, and the chairman, they are aware that we can house to make it possible that we occupy that building. And I want to assure you members that by the end of April, that house will be habitable, it will be occupiable, and our members will have their offices there, and our staff will have their offices there. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Let me hear from the chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. And for the comfort of members, this is just the PSC reorganizing their own budget. They have reorganized their own votes, and therefore they are not encroaching on any other votes or any other person's budget or any other MDA's budget. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, we had the opportunity to interact with the PSC, with the leadership of the member for Mavoko, and we put them to task that once then we grant, because we actually granted additional resources, then this issue of the Bunge Towers must now become a thing of the past. They must now put up their socks, they make sure all the pending works are done, and the members should occupy that house as soon as it is practically possible, so that we save ourselves of the recurrent costs, Mr. Speaker, that we pay offices outside of the precincts of Parliament, and so that, Mr. Speaker, the members of this House can get decent offices. That is the essence, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
On Bokose, let me give you the last chance before we put the question. Bokose.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, looking at the reorganization, it does not incur an extra cost. But what I want to say is that this process of building the new tower, it is actually taken very long. And it's an embarrassment as a house that we provide oversight to other institutions, to have our own institution taking that long and tracking on with the bending bills and becoming a cash cow, maybe for other people. I think it's a right, and one time, Honorable Chair, some of us felt that the Facility and Improvement and Facility and Services Committee should be the committee that offers this commission for proper efficiency. Because if every institution of government has agreed that we should be subjected to oversight and they are transparent, then I think it's a high time that the Parliamentary Service Commission becomes also transparent, and it should be oversighted by a committee of this House. I raise my case, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Onelachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to add on it and to appreciate the budget chair, but also to just tell our House that indeed it is time, first of all, Mr. Speaker, we ask the Commission to stop any other project and to now finalize with the monies that they are being given to finalize that tower and to give us dignity so that also people don't just question. We have the pension towers here that was finished that only spent 2 billion to finalize. It is unfair for members, for their welfare, and more important, for the image of Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, as we conclude on this matter, let me allow Hon Wilberforce Oundo, very briefly.
Chair, I totally agree they need to finalize the building, the tower, but I hope in the fullness of time, Parliament or Parliamentary Service Commission will review all the leases and all the expenditures on rent so that we don't continue losing money that we could have used for more fundamental functions or mandate of the National Assembly. But tellingly, Honorable Speaker, and I think this is a matter that Parliamentary Service Commission needs to pick up, and the chair can also pick up, there has been continued complaint that the building belonging to National Chamber of Industry and Commerce was appropriated, so to speak, by the National Assembly or Parliament. It has never used the building, and they have never paid any rent. Are we facing a situation we are going to have an extremely high case of pending bill? I think that's a matter that needs to be addressed in fullness of time, so that as we reorganize the sitting arrangement and the space for Parliament, we put this matter to rest, that we are not confronted with another huge pending bill in the next budget. Thank you, Chair.
Lastly, attorney, right of reply. Let me hear from you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Honorable Pukosi has spoken for me. But what I wanted to say, Chair, is that members need beautiful offices in which they need to operate and serve Kenyans. But, Chair, we need to caution PSC that, one, they are running so many programs. They start new programs before they finish the ones that are already ongoing. And the case in point is this case of our tower. This tower is been going on for many years, and this house has appropriated a lot of money for it. And we don't want PSC members to come before the House and ask for money, and there's no accountability. Therefore, I want to say that as I support that amendment, I want to urge PSC that they must account for the resources that we have given them, and especially to Budget Committee and also to this House. And also, Chair, this is also the opportunity that members have to interrogate PSC. So even if they want money, we need to ask them what they have done with the previous monies. In the Budget Committee, we had very many questions which were not answered, Chair. So even as we approve and I support, we need clear answers on some of the resources they have. We don't want PSC that is only traveling and spending per diems and not giving this House answers on programs. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I support.
Very well. I put the question that Schedule 1 be amended as proposed by Hon Macau. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that Schedule 1 be amended, as amended, be part of the bill. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Second schedule. I propose the question that the second schedule be part of the bill. Mover? Chairman? Chair. Second schedule.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and I wish to propose the amendments as they appear on the order paper.
I propose the question that the second schedule be amended as proposed by the Chair. I put the question that the second schedule be amended as proposed by the Chair. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of contrary opinion say nay? I now, there's another amendment. Very well. Hon Macau.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've listened to the concerns of members, but I urge these members, Mr. Chairman, to give us a benefit of doubt. This is a new commission. And Mr. Chairman, as I said, we are committed, and actually we are at the tail end of concluding this building. And Mr. Chair, therefore, I wish to amend the second schedule as it appears on the order paper, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very well. I propose the question that Schedule 2 be amended as proposed by Hon Macau. I see Hon Ochieng.
No, thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, the Budget Committee Chair, for a good job, to the PSC for finally saying they want to finalize. I just wanted to ask the chairperson that as they do so, spare even 5 million shillings only to give us a place to walk from. Because walking from Cope Bank into Continental House is difficult. We can't walk there. I mean, as you do that, make the life of members of parliament a bit easier. You can't brush our shoes 7 times in a day, because if you go to your office in Continental House when you leave, or you go to the gym when you leave, by the time you go to parliament, you are so dusty and all that. So as you do the offices, make sure that even the walkways are done so that we're able to, some dignity for members. Thank you.
The interventions here. Nikal. Or Nikal.
Again, as I support this, and the chair of the Budget and Appropriation Committee and the other committees, they have done a good job, except now we are having a lot of generalities. You are actually increasing a budget by 100 million, and you say we are increasing because we want to get the work done. Surely, this is the time you say we are going to say buy furniture, and we are needed this money, and this is what we are going to do. And now you say this another 100 million here. Say exactly why the need was seen. I don't think in the committee they just sat and said, I think we need 100 million. There must have been something that was needed to be done. And in order to guide the House, like in this case, what exactly did we want to do with this 100 million?
Very well. On Wachira Karani, Laikipia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to intervene. I declare my interest. I'm the chair of Services and Facilities in Parliament, National Assembly. Our committee is the one that is supposed to oversight the Parliamentary Service Commission. But you have realized, Mr. Chairman, whenever we as a committee are supposed to do our work, Parliamentary Service Commission comes here and gives a statement. Like this afternoon, when the substantive speaker was on the chair, members complained about crossing over to the offices on the other side. But
proceed, but you are being Honmeli on this.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder we can settle there. Many of us are still not out there in rental offices, and yet you have not paid for our rent. And this is actually a problem, because right now the people who are asking for rent are actually, we normally bring the bill to the Parliamentary Service Commission, and it's not yet paid. Can we have it done on time? Thank you.
Thank you. I now put the question. That Schedule 2 be amended as proposed by Hon Macau. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Will as many as will be part of the title of the bill. The title be the title of the bill. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Will
Clause 1.
I propose the question that clause 1 be part of, put the question that clause 1 be part of the bill. Will as many as are of that opinion say nay? The ayes are. Very well, members, and thank you very much. We are through. I now call the mover to report.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Very well.
The other one.
I put the question, which is that the committee do report session of the supplementary appropriation bill, National Assembly Bill number with amendments. That I now put the question that as many as of that opinion say aye.
Chairman.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the whole House has considered the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, and approved the same with amendments.
Thank you. The mover.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I also request Honorable Dr. Pukose to second the motion for agreement with the report of the committee of the whole House.
Honorable Pukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I second.
Honorable members, I propose the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I now put the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Mover.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read at that time. I also request Honorable Murugara to second.
Honorable Speaker, I do second.
Honorable members, I propose the question, which is that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read a third time. Now put the question, which is that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read a third time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and their application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2023, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes.
Thank you. Next. Honorable members, we have now finished the appropriations bill. Now I will, given the number of members who showed support for Honorable Mwalio's motion of adjournment, I will stay the next order, which is a continuing debate on the proposal to amend the Constitution, and move the House to start the debate on the motion of adjournment. I also want to encourage members that the subject matter that the Honorable Mwalio is bringing to the floor is highly emotive definitely divisive. And I want to encourage all of you who want to contribute and who will contribute to moderate your language and speak on the matter with sobriety, maintaining the dignity of this House. And that being the case, then we will be guiding the country accordingly. No unnecessary passions, no unnecessary emotions, and let's avoid any unnecessary altercations between members. Honorable Mwalio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move this motion by giving a background of the events. The Supreme Court, having okayed a plea as requested by the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, NGIHRC, that the latter be registered as NGO by the NGO Coordination Board, whom and contested the request for registration due to some obvious violation of reflected in the Penal Code and such other acts, including but not limited to the NGO Coordination Act and the Sexual Offences Act 3 of 2006. Since the decision was pronounced, there has been a public outcry regarding the moral course we are taking as a country. Our principles, norms, values, and the practices have never been anchored on undefined and uncharacterized sexual orientation for as long as our existence can be traced and documented. It is prudent to note and appreciate that all acts of unnatural sex acts and associations have been criminalized in the Penal Code Chapter 63 Laws of Kenya, as further read with the Sexual Offences Act number 3 of 426. The ruling by the Apex Court presents an unforeseen avenue to open a floodgate of unprecedented acts and activities where groups and associations are likely to register their associations, citing existence of the very right exercised by the National Gay and the Lesbian Human Rights Commission. The same shall be cited as a legal procedure to argue reasonable grounds for such a registration. In April 2nd, 2013, the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, NGLHRC, attempted to reserve a name for registration as an NGO with the NGO Coordination Board, but the names were deemed unacceptable. In April 2013, after 3 attempts to change the name, National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission sought services of an advocate and filed a petition at the High Court of Kenya, petition number 44 of 2013. In April 24, 2015, the High Court of Kenya delivered the first judgment from a 3-judge bench confirming freedom of association for people of diverse identities and expanding Article 27 of the Constitution to include non-discrimination of people. In April 2015, the NGO Coordination Board appealed the court decision at the Court of Appeal after they felt dissatisfied by the High Court findings. In March 29, 2019, the Court of Appeal dismissed Civil Appeal number 145 of 2019 and thus confirmed the right of association for LGBTQ people. Therefore, thereafter, the NGO Coordinator Board appealed the Court of Appeal decision to the Apex Court, the Supreme Court. February 24, 2023, just the other day, the Supreme Court of Kenya affirmed the decision of the High Court and the Court of Appeal to allow the registration of National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission as an NGO with the words gay and lesbian in its title. In conclusion, if this matter is unmitigated, we risk to inject bad morals in the society to the unfounded natural basis. This poses even greater danger to the schools-going children who are at high risk to adopt lifestyles which are erratic and contrary to their upbringing. In conclusion, the Bible says in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 27 to 28, when God joined a man and a woman, he told them, multiply and fill the earth. Now, the question is, a man and a man, are they going to multiply and fill the earth? A woman and a woman, are they able to give birth and multiply as the Bible has said? Therefore, I want to move this so that we can be able to debate and advise this country and the people that elected us that we are not together with this judgment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mwalio. So that we can get the perspective of the other religion, may we have Honorable Mishi Mboko, the MP for Likoni and Commissioner.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Chair wa Speakers Panel. Mimi nataka kuunga mkono Mheshimiwa kwa sababu ya kuleta hoja hii. Na hoja hii naona imezua tumbo joto sana katika nchi yetu kwa sababu imeweza kugusa mambo ya maadili yetu sisi kama Waafrika na sisi kama Wakenya, sisi kama Wakristo, sisi kama Waislamu na hata zile dini za kijamii. Kwa hakika sisi tunaheshimu mahakama. Lakini kwa sababu tunaheshimu mahakama, hatuwezi pia kukubali hukumu ambazo zimetolewa ambazo zitaathiri jamii zetu. Tunajua hivi sasa kabla ya LGBT ama hawa wanaojiita LGBT kuweza kupata vibali vya kuweza kutengeza makundi yao na kuweza kutambulika katika taifa letu, kumekuwa na tetesi na athari nyingi sana za mambo haya ambayo yako kinyume na dini yetu na yako kinyume pia na tamaduni zetu. Kwa Wakristo najua katika Biblia tunajua habari za Sodoma na Gomora. Na katika Kiislamu pia katika Quran tumeona mambo ya Sodoma na Gomora. Sasa je, leo watu hawa tukiwapa kipao mbele cha kuwapatia nafasi ama kuwapatia jukwaa ambalo wanaweza kuendeleza mambo yao ambayo ni mambo maovu, mambo machafu, mambo ya dhambi. Je, taifa hili la Kenya tutakuwa tunasonga wapi? Taifa hili tumezungumzia ya kwamba lazima tuangalie takrimu za idadi ya Wakenya zinavyoendelea. Maradhi ya saratani na mambo mengi. Hivyo basi lazima tuangalie takrimu ya idadi yetu kupitia mazazi ama vile tunavyoweza kuongeza idadi ya Wakenya katika nchi yetu. Leo hii tunaambiwa ya kwamba watu hao watakuwa na uwezo wa kuwa na kundi lao, waweze kuendeleza hoja zao. Pengine swali tutauliza, wakiwa na makundi kama haya, hoja zao zitakuwa ni zipi? Swali litakuwa hoja zao ni kwamba sisi tumetengwa. Mumetengwa vipi? Wewe ukiwa Mkenya, ukiwa mke, ukiwa mume, haki zako zote za kimsingi ziko katika katiba na haki zako zimeangaliwa. Iwapo utasema ya kwamba tunataka makundi tutetee haki zetu, haki gani? Na kwangu mimi zitakuwa si haki, bali ni upotevu na ni madhambi makubwa sana ambayo tunataka kuyaidhinisha katika nchi hii. Tunajua makundi haya yamekuwa yakifanya kazi kisiri, yakiweza kufanya ile tunasema Kiingereza awareness, na wakifanya recruitment ama ile kuandikisha watu katika makundi yao ili kuwaingiza katika tabia potofu kama hizi. Leo tukiwapatia ruhusa muafaka ya kisheria ya kwamba tumewapatia nafasi muwe na makundi haya ama majukwaa haya na muweze kuzungumza mambo yenu ambayo mnayahitaji, je, taifa hili la Kenya tutaweza kuwa katika hali gani? Mimi nataka kumuona kiongozi wa taifa hili akiweza kuzungumzia swala hili na akiweza kulikemea swala hili kama anavyosema yeye ni Mkristo ambaye ameshika dini sana. Na iwapo ni Mkristo kweli ameshika dini sana, tunataka kusikia sauti yake na tunataka kusikia sauti ya taifa zima la Kenya likikemea jambo hili. Tunajua tunazungumzia ya kuwa ulimwengu umebadilika na kwamba kuna mambo mengi sana lazima yawe yanabadilika, lakini hatutakubali kubadilika kiwango cha kwamba tutakwenda kinyume na dini yetu na tutakwenda kinyume na maadili yetu sisi kama taifa. Ukiangalia katiba yetu kuna sura ambayo imezungumzia maadili ya kitaifa. Je, katika maadili ya kitaifa mumeweza kuona mambo ya wasagaji na mambo ya mashoga? Pole, kwa sababu lugha hino pengine itakuwa ni lugha potofu, lakini ndivyo inavyoitwa Kiswahili. Kwa mwanamume itakuwa ni mashoga, kwa mwanamke itakuwa ni masago. Na tunajua watu hawa na katika haya mambo wanayoyafanya ni mambo mabaya ambayo pia yanatuletea maradhi. Sasa haswa kwa wasagaji, mambo wanayotumia na vifaa wanavyotumia ni kuleta saratani za kizazi katika kina mama, na jambo hili hatutaweza haswa kulikubali. Na haswa iwapo watu wetu wataiga tabia hizi na ziwaingie katika nafsi zao, basi itakuwa mtoto wa kike hatapata mume wa kumuoa na mtoto wa kiume pia hatapata mke wa kumuoa, kwa sababu athari huanza polepole. Unapoona moshi ujue moto uko njiani waja, na wakati umefika moto, je, tutaweza kuzima madhambi hayo? Watoto wa kiume tunawaenzi, watoto wa kike tunawaenzi. Ndiposa Mwenyezi Mungu alipomuumba Adam na akamtoa Hawa kutokana kwa Adam, ili tuweze kuzaa na tuweze kuweka ulimwengu wetu katika hali ya usawa. Jamani, tunataka kusikia sauti ya rais ikikemea jambo hili. Tunataka kusikia sauti za mawaziri na vitengo vyote vya serikali na wabunge wenzangu, tukemee jambo hili. Jambo hili likiwa, basi sisi tumeangamia na umma wetu umeangamia. Hatutaweza kuwa na watoto wa kike wala mtoto wa kiume, manake kama mtoto wa kiume atavaa kama mtoto wa kike, kama mtoto wa kiume atataka kujiiga mpaka tabia za kike ndo azifanye. Je, sisi tutakuwa watoto wa kike na wa kiume? Hilo ni swala nyeti na tafakari ya babu. Tujiangalie, tujinasue, tujiulize kama taifa, hata kama tunataka kusaidika, lakini hatutaweza.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Mboko kwa maono hayo. Mheshimiwa Rindikiri Mugambi, mjumbe wa Buri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I study here as a Christian and one opposed to this movement, LGBTQ. I am very uncomfortable because our social fabric has been now attacked by an institution that we thought will put into consideration the survival of our generations. Mr. Speaker, what we have seen from the Supreme Court, tomorrow we will most likely get some human and animal movement, because there are some human beings with appetite for animals. They will also go to court. And if this being a case in court, it has sent some benchmarks. We should expect anything from our Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, I join the other members because this is a very serious matter. They have no regard on survival of humanity in Kenya. This behavior is a foreign behavior. It's a behavior that is common in most affluent communities. It is not common in rural areas. It's not common in areas that we all know preach religion, whether Muslim or Christianity or Hindu. More than 90% of Kenyans worship God. This section of perpetrators of this funny behavior, they don't even constitute 0.00001% of our population. I thought from where we come from, the Chief Justice is a mother. The Chief Justice of Kenya is a mother. The justice in Supreme Court, they are fathers and brothers and sisters. We are asking, did they really do that, knowing for sure that this matter is going to generate a lot of heat in our circles? Mr. Speaker, I think time has come. We have to preserve our dignity as Kenyan. And we cannot allow, by whatever means, an institution in the name of Supreme Court that the judges are telling us you can proceed and do whatever sexual orientation that you have because there is human rights. I think there must be a limitation on human rights and association. I'm not a lawyer, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, you are a lawyer. But I'm sure in your understanding, that judgment did not take into consideration the implied expectations of majority of Kenyans. We ask that the Supreme Court reviews its judgment. We ask the Supreme Court to listen to the majority of Kenyans. We ask the Supreme Court to look at what the Constitution provides in terms of the human rights. This matter has been learned there for many years. It's only this Supreme Court, which are history of making funny judgment, they are brought to us. The Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, Martha Koome, please go back again and look at that. You have condemned our society. You have condemned our lives for our children. You are telling us any Kenyan can do anything. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a shame. I am ashamed. I am ashamed by the decision of the Supreme Court. And we must condemn this. And we must, if there is anything that should bring us together, is this. I'm also waiting for Baba to make a comment on this.
Thank you, Honorable Indikiri, for urging everybody to make a voice on this. even as you do so. Honorable Wilberforce Oundo, MP for Funyula.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, thank you for my colleague for bringing up this motion on the floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, I'm a Catholic, born Catholic, and that I must declare my interest from the word go. And as Catholics, our dogma and teaching is expressly clear on sexual orientation. There could be other Christian sects that have got a different view about this matter, but as our Catholic, that's my foundation. Starts from there. Honorable Speaker, in the book of Leviticus, it is written this way: if a man has sexual relationship with another man, they have done a disgusting thing, and both shall be put to death. They are responsible for their own death. There's no other way, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the Constitution of Kenya on the national values, it's expressly clear. And I want to read Article 11 on the culture, and it's very clear. The Constitution recognizes, this Constitution recognizes culture as the foundation of the nation and as the cumulative civilization of the people of Kenya and the nation. Honorable Speaker, what does our culture say? Our culture say a man shall leave his father's house and together with the woman they find, start a home. Our culture never contemplated and never talks of any other arrangement other than what is expected. Honorable Speaker, again in the same book of Leviticus, it says, any man, if a man has sexual relations with an animal, he and an animal shall be put to death. Bad sexual habits or orientation are classified together. Honorable Speaker, whatever they're calling themselves, they are akin to bestialists. People who do bad manners, they would say, with animals. We categorize them as the same. Honorable Speaker, many of us were alarmed, were flabbergasted beyond recovery when we heard that Supreme Court ruling. And Honorable Speaker, we have been very suspicious of the current Supreme Court. And indeed, our fears have been confirmed. It is indeed, Honorable Speaker, look at it, the way the Supreme Court in the US is structured, so that we find a balance between alarmists, between members who simply want to destroy this society, and those of us who values the culture of the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, honestly speaking, I do not even understand it. There are some things that are beyond my understanding, regardless of my level of education and exposure. I cannot understand how a reasonable man, a sane man, can leave a beautiful woman. And if there's anything that God created, the best thing in this world, in the eyes of a man, was a woman. I cannot understand how a man can admire another man. I cannot understand, even look at how a woman can admire another woman. I don't know what they do when they are together. Honorable Speaker, there are some things just don't understand. Truly, the Speaker is an advocate. You really have to guide us here. I'm just at a loss. I do not even know how to even talk to my grandchildren when they tell me that the Supreme Court has made some ruling. Honorable Speaker, we did divine intervention here. Unfortunately, some Christian denominations support this kind of deviant behaviors, and probably the Supreme Court and our young people are going to take cue. Allow man and a man to attend a wedding.
Does the Leader of Majority want to contribute? Proceed, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, indeed, I want to contribute, Honorable Speaker, because this is a matter not just of faith, but also touches on our national morals, values, and our culture as a people. Let me just say from the onset, Honorable Speaker, I am a Presbyterian because I heard the member for Funyula say he's Catholic. I am member number 39 in the Kambura district of the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, the Reverend Musagetao Church. And Honorable Speaker, those who advance those things, I don't even want to mention them, Honorable Speaker, have their own countries and they have their own cultures. And we respect their cultures, and they must equally respect our cultures as African and as Kenyans. And nobody should imagine that you can force down the throats of Kenyans alien cultures that are alien to our nationality and our being African, Honorable Speaker. The issues, Honorable Speaker, that the Supreme Court was addressing itself to, and I really want to avoid going for the Supreme Court in any manner because they have a duty and an obligation under the law to interpret the Constitution in the best way they think it should be interpreted. And I think even in the Supreme Court, opinion was varied. It's only that the majority decision had their say, but the minority also had, majority had their way, but the minority also in the Supreme Court had their say. And I want to identify myself with the opinion and the views of the minority in the Supreme Court, Honorable Speaker. That we shall not allow and we must never allow our country to take up alien ideas, alien cultures, because we are a country that tends to copy a number of few things, good things, few from those other cultures. Honorable Speaker, our laws are quite clear. Our penal code still has outlawed issues to do with homosexuality. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it was absurd that a good number in the Supreme Court did find it fit to allow a habit or something that is already outlawed under our laws, that you could now allow people to associate. What happens tomorrow, Honorable Speaker, if all the pickpockets in our streets decide now that they have rights as pickpockets and they want to form the Association of Nairobi Street Pocket Thieves, or even robbers, bank robbers? Tomorrow, robbers may decide that we have certain rights under the Constitution, the right to association. But, Honorable Speaker, the Constitution also says that your rights are limited.
Majority Leader, would that be the Bank Robbers Association of Kenya region?
It could be the Bank Robbers Association of Kenya, or rapists. Tomorrow, you may find rapists saying that we are the Association of Rapists of Kenya, and we have the right to do whatever we want to do with whoever we want to do it, Honorable Speaker. And they could argue that out in a court of law and say they are guaranteed of their right to association and freedom of association, Honorable Speaker. But we must also know that our Constitution also limits everybody's rights, and especially where your rights also, in a way, overstepped to interfere with my rights. And we have also to enjoy our religious rights, our rights to worship, our rights to our own cultures. We must protect our rights. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, as leader of majority in this House, for the time the Almighty God grants me the opportunity to serve this country as leader of majority, I will not allow, and I said elsewhere, I will mobilize this House and any other House in this Republic to ensure that we protect the laws that have outlawed homosexuality, lesbianism, and all those other things that are abominable under our culture and our religions, Honorable Speaker. And we must protect our cultures, Honorable Speaker, and our being as a people. If there is anything I agree with our good friend, President Yoweri Museveni.
Give him 1 minute, he's the majority leader.
I was saying, Honorable Speaker, if there is anything I support President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni on, is on the issue of LGBT. Honorable Speaker, I will not go to the extreme in how you deal with them. but we must be forthright as a nation to protect our own cultures, our religion, and our beliefs. And we must not allow those countries from the West who believe in those things, let them believe in whatever they want to believe in, but they must not force us to believe in the things they believe in. They must also respect our culture, our religion, and the things we believe in, but not shove things down our throats, the things we don't believe in. And we want to raise up our children in an upright country, in an upright society, Honorable Speaker, where our children will enjoy to grow the way we grew up, with morals, with good ethics, Honorable Speaker, and in a country that we can all be proud to raise our kids in, Honorable Speaker. With that, I support the Honorable Mwalio and this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable Farah Malim.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know where the world is going to. Mr. Speaker, this is abominable. It's a decadent, it's an obnoxious behavior. I wish I had Babu Owino here to give me all those adjectives that he normally uses for these things. Mr. Speaker, those people are dead as human beings who support such things. In my faith, as a Muslim, the death penalty is what they deserve, people who engage in such things. And I'm proud of that. And I don't care what somebody else feels. The West has never been a moral authority. These are the people who came and enslaved us. And they came and colonized us. And they came and treated us like animals. I want to tell us to behave like animals. The next thing that's going to come up...
Honorable Farah Malim, which animals engage in homosexuality?
No, you're right. I'm sorry. I withdraw that bit. I withdraw that bit in the interest and the respect for the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom never engages in that. But the next thing they're going to tell us is that somebody, to marry another man, or a woman has a right to marry a woman. What do women who are married do? What is there? God has created a man and a woman. It's there in all the Abrahamic scriptures. It's in Islam. It's in Christianity. It's in Judaism. If we allow them to take over our lives, we have allowed them for far too long for them to exploit us and to dehumanize us as human beings. On this, we will say no. If they're going to come up with the travel, restrictions, keep your country, keep your cultures, keep your nonsense to yourselves. And I'm talking to the West in this case here. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court itself does not make laws, it interprets the laws. You're a legal mind, I'm a legal mind. Sodomy is a crime in our books. So how should they come about now and tell us that they should be allowed to associate, the right to association? As you had said, the majority leader has said, this is like saying the right of association of the bank robbers, of the murderers, of the killers. In the US, there are a number of states that have got the death penalty. And the death penalty is for crimes like murder. And the biggest number of people who are on the death rows are fellow blacks. In the US. And in Texas and a number of other states where they have Republican governors, they execute them. We cannot go there and tell them, don't take away life. They'll tell you, these are our laws. Mr. Speaker, not only shall we come with a motion of censure on the Supreme Court itself for trying to legislate from the bench, instead of interpreting the laws of the country, they want to legislate from the bench by trying to look politically correct with the Western world. They do not deserve to sit as a bench. There is need for us to bring a motion on here to ask them, where did you get this piece of legislation? Here is the act. that criminalizes homosexuality. We must take them to task on that. As for us, I am of the opinion that we should pass a capital punishment on such offenses. Capital punishment, Mr. Speaker. They have their own capital punishment on murderers, on other people. Most of them are blacks who have been framed in the US, and we cannot interfere in their laws. They go on killing those people there because they say they committed murders. Here we are telling them this thing is worse than murder for us in our cultures as Africans, as black people, as a... Mr. Speaker, can you give me 1 more minute as a ranking member and the former deputy speaker? Or 2 minutes for me, actually. And we have a right.
Honorable Farah Malim, the speaker has not spoken.
Oh, okay.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we take charge of our own destiny. We take charge of our own. They are going to legalize marijuana. They have legalized, what do you call anything? Very soon they're going to legalize the drugs that are going to destroy our generations and children in here. It is, in my very humble opinion, that we take charge of our countries. We are independent. We are a sovereign state. We have our cultures. Our cultures do not conflict. African cultures on some of these fundamental issues are the same. It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or you're a traditionalist. We all have a common culture on such things. It's my opinion, my humble opinion, that we should change that piece of act itself and prescribe capital punishment for people who can be proven to have engaged in this kind of things. When I say capital punishment, Muslims, where there's a serious Islamic states who follow their own scriptures, they carry out capital punishment on them. They do not deserve to live. In my opinion, humble opinion. They should be, yes, indeed. The next thing they're going to come to us is say that one has to be has the right to marry a dog, or one has the right to marry an ape, or anything. Just imagine a day in which somebody will come and say that this goat is my wife, or this what you call ram is my husband, and this is my right of association. I've chosen to have this as a husband, and a woman will come. That is the direction in which they're going. We're not going to be part of that. The earlier we put our foot down, they give us nothing. They only take away things from us. The earlier we put our foot very hard down and say, on this, no, the better. And I commend such countries like the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, the president of Malawi. Of course, Mugabe was one guy who called out these things many years back and told them, these are nations of gays and what do you call lesbians, and these are not people that we can talk to. It's something we frown upon. We see them as subhumans. How does a subhuman tell you what to do and how to live in your own lives? So we must be able to stand on our own grounds as a continent, as the leaders. We are the leaders of this country. That should never be allowed. They should never, ever be allowed to bring this decadent, obnoxious, un-African culture. Support.
Thank you, Honorable Farah Malim. The Chair of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, the Honorable Gitonga Murugara, the MP for Tharaka.
Thank you.
Is in the House now that we are talking about the Supreme Court, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, allow me to also voice my concerns about this decision. And from the outset say we are not, as a House, attacking the Supreme Court. But we are expressing a totally differing opinion with what they rendered. That we speak. We may not speak as a court, but we speak on behalf of our own people who have elected us to represent them here. And therefore, our voice is the voice of the people, while their voice was actually the voice of the court. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the sentiments expressed by yourself and others, that this is a decision that should not be left to stand in our books. We should move with speed, bring together the Supreme Court judges, the 7 of them, and let them listen to us as lawyers as we urge them to review the decision and set it aside. We know very well we cannot compare law with morality, but sometimes moral issues supersede the law. In fact, in most cases where the law becomes repugnant to morality, then that is extremely bad law and should be done away with. It is quite clear from our books that some of these things in LGBTQ are actually outlawed. And therefore, anything associated with those characters cannot be allowed to stand against the morals of the people of Kenya. Whether it's sodomy, whether it's lesbianism, whether it's queerness, whether it is anything that is outward practiced by these characters who say they have human rights. They may have their rights in private, and I'm sorry, I shiver and shudder when I imagine what they do in private, because it is totally repugnant, especially to us Africans. It's also important to condemn those who come with these ideas. And this is why today we celebrate the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. We celebrate the late Robert Mugabe of Uganda. And sometimes it actually appears Idi Amin himself was a saint, because these are the things he was condemning those days, in spite of being incited by these same Europeans and Americans to kill a few Ugandans. Therefore, we as Africans must stand up. We must stand to be counted. We must tell these Europeans and Americans that for the little money they are enticing us with, I'm told they're even offering relief food to Kenyans so that you can legalize things like this one. They have been approaching our organizations, including the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, offering tokens so that they can promote rights of such characters. Thank heavens, these commissions and these organizations have said no to their little tokens. Let them keep their bad habits in Europe, in America. Let us, as Africans, keep what we consider to be morally upright and suitable for our society. For example, look at these people who are telling us today, these are human rights. They are the ones who came here, and the first thing they did was to point out that Africans do not marry out of love, but do purchase wives because they are polygamous. What is better compared to the two? Polygamy and such queerness they are advancing to us. Polygamy actually has nothing right, nothing wrong in terms of morals. It's upright. It should have been encouraged. Number two, they are the ones also who came along and told us that you people, you don't know how to live. Your customary laws are repugnant to justice and morality, and what have you. Those are the laws that had kept us Africans within the fabric of a good family, which we have maintained to date. Therefore, this judgment, this ruling, should actually be re-examined through a review. And if the review is denied, rest assured, as a house, we will move to outlaw everything they have done, because we have power to do so. I support the adjournment motion.
Thank you, Honorable Patrick Makau. Are you on intervention, or you want to contribute?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I cannot add more. Most speakers have spoken. The first question you should ask, this parliament, we are the most important arm of this government. Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow the courts to legislate from their benches. Mr. Speaker, Article 11 is very explicit about respecting African traditions and cultures. Mr. Speaker, when I see the Supreme Court, which supposedly is supposed to be constituted of men and women, well-learned, cannot lead this country to making us believe that lesbians, gays, queers, and those likes are supposed to be given end space in this country. Mr. Speaker, that is not African, it is an African. And there is no religion which ascribes to any of those. Mr. Speaker, it's high time this parliament expressed itself in all ways, in all media houses, in barazas, Mr. Speaker. We must condemn that ruling by the Supreme Court. And Mr. Speaker, it's high time the Attorney General of this country went to appeal this ruling, because those 5 judges who passed this kind of judgment, Mr. Speaker, he favored encourage other groups. Mr. Speaker, then we should have the Mungiki, we should have Al-Shabaab, we should have rapists, we should have murderers, allowed then by the same Supreme Court to form alliances, to form associations. Mr. Speaker, when I look at that bench, none of them is less than 40 years. Mr. Speaker, what are they telling our young children? What are they telling the generations? Mr. Speaker, I'm now been made to believe that the former president of USA, Donald Trump, did not support this. Neither is Museveni. Mr. Speaker, I agree with speakers here who are saying we should not just be made slaves because we need funding from the West. Mr. Speaker, this thing of us being told before we are given money from IMF, from World Bank, we must admit, we must accept these laws. This is strange to us. Mr. Speaker, we must tell them. I know they force us, GMOs, and we know the reason why they did that. Mr. Speaker, now they are here telling us we should have a man and a man marry each other. Mr. Speaker, I can't imagine myself seeing a man and having a had-on. Mr. Speaker, that is against African tradition. I must see a woman and feel like that. Mr. Speaker, I am a watcher and I'm a fan of National Geographic, which has documentaries. You see male animals being attracted to females, fighting to death. I have never seen a male animal raising to satisfy itself sexually on another male animal. So what are they telling us, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this country, and I want to hear the leadership of this country speak against this. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I think the president of this country should write immediately to the Attorney General to appeal this ruling. It cannot be bearable. Yes, Kenya is a Christian nation. It has Muslims. It has all denominations. But, Mr. Speaker, our constitution is supreme. Article 11 explicitly said it. The Ashpal guy spoke about it, his commission, the bombers 1 and 2, they were against this. How can we then, 2023, admit the gays and lesbians of this world to rule this country? Mr. Speaker, on this seat where I sit from, I am telling people who I represent from Mavoko, if you see gays and lesbians, tell them to be wary of me, because I'm going to tell you what you are going to do with them. So are Kenyans. We cannot allow that, Mr. Speaker. We must condemn this ruling by all means, even if it means us calling those judges to apologize to Kenyans and say they judged and they ruled when they were not sober, Mr. Speaker. Then is when we are going to agree with their ruling. However, Mr. Speaker, this House has a role to legislate and make laws that befit this country. Let's not forget our mandate. Let us stand by the virtues. And
Honorable Joanna Ngino.
Speaker, thank you also for allowing me to ventilate on this. I just want to say from the onset that Article 1 of the Constitution, which talks about the supremacy of the Constitution and supremacy of the people, when it talks about the supremacy of the Constitution, it says clearly that this Constitution is supreme to any other law. And no law, including customary law, is superior to the Constitution. And any other law that is that is actually trying to supersede the Constitution is null and void. Mr. Speaker, when you talk about the customary law, it is the same as talking about any other law that is created in this house. We are the people who do the laws of this land. We amend the laws, we create the laws, but if that law goes against the Constitution of this country, Mr. Speaker, it is declared null and void. Same case with the laws which are made by the courts, whether it is a magistrate's court, whether it is a high court, whether it is a Supreme Court, whether it is a court of appeal. Whenever they pass any judgment, most of their judgments are deemed to be precedences, and they are used in courts or other courts as a law. So, Mr. Speaker, the ruling by the Supreme Court, whichever way it was, has gone against the Constitution, Article 11. And therefore, it means that judgment which was made by the Supreme Court is null and void because it is against the Constitution. And there is nothing else we can say about it. We will still consider in this House that that law never existed. That judgment was never made. We just consider it as if there was nothing done. As if the Supreme Court judge, as if there was 6, if there was 7, they sat in vain. Whatever the decision they made in that particular judgment, it was done in vain. Because Article 11 is very clear. No same-sex marriage is allowed in this country. No same-sex relationship is allowed in this country. No same-sex penetration is allowed in this country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when these particular courts declare or presume to be making a declaration that they are making a judgment, they are giving a ruling that we allow these people to have a relationship, we allow these people to look at one another, we allow these people to have some association. Mr. Speaker, that is going contrary to the Constitution. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would want to say, just like what my senior said, do we need to tell these judges to revoke? Do we need to create what we call review? Or do we need to pass in this House, Mr. Speaker? Because there was, and I don't want to preempt, there is an intention by a member to pass a law, to bring a law into this House, Mr. Speaker, that will illegalize any act of either association, either penetration, either marriage, on all these people who call themselves, I don't know, gay, I don't know, lesbians. Mr. Speaker, I think we will pass that law with Godspeed. And it will be now upon the courts to make a decision whether that passage of that law or whether that law is against the Constitution. We are waiting for that time. We are really waiting, Mr. Speaker. And I don't know if some of these decisions are based on whatever these people want to give to our country. Some of us may not want to be beggars. Some of us may not want to sell our birthright. Some of us may not want to exchange our humanity with money. We want to tell the Supreme Court, read the Constitution, Article 11, same-sex marriage is illegal, same-sex association is illegal, same-sex penetration, Mr. Speaker, is illegal. I thank you very much.
Honorable Jackson Kosgei, nominated MP.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I want to begin from the onset by saying the purpose of government is to protect the freedom of its people, the dignity of its people, and also the natural right to self-preservation. In that particular third one, and weaken the position of family, we are endangering the very right and natural right to self-preservation as a community. The Supreme Court decision used its privilege to allow what has been known in the streets as the tyranny of minority over majority. The whole world and the population of the world, Mr. Speaker, is about 7.9 billion people, out of which 2.4 are Christian, 1.8 are Muslims. You talk about the Hindus, 1.3, Buddhists are 0.6, and the rest can follow. You can tell over 80% of the total population of the world believe in creation. They believe in heterosexual relationship. That is a relationship between a man and a woman. Not only for pleasure, love, and relationship, but for procreation and survival of the human race. If this has been done, and if the ruling by the Supreme Court becomes cast on the stone, then I don't think it can overturn our Constitution. We are going to invoke we the people. And this house is a house which is an arm of government. If it is the arm of government, when such situation happens, which is endangering the very survival of our people, then we must take this to referendum, where the people of Kenya will have an opportunity to speak. We cannot be dictated on by a civilization on its lowest ebb in history. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we want to look at it from the impact of this particular exercise. They want to have the whole world accepting it. All the Caucasians in the world, being a minority in the world, because of population growth, which has dwindled. Now, you can see in the next 30 years or 40, trajectory shows that the population of Europe will be very low, that it will take Africa, which is growing, and Eastern Europe to take up, to be able to carry on what they are doing. Is this what they want to import into Africa and the rest of the world to finish their population? We must say no as a matter of survival, as the representative of our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Timothy Wanyonyi, the MP for Westlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance also to speak on this motion. Mr. Speaker, if I asked you, what do you call this thing in your mother tongue? Do we have it even described in African languages, how it's called? Because it doesn't exist, and it never existed. You remember in the history, the Mwanga of Uganda, those small boys used to be called pages. They used to be used as bets for this kind of thing, and those who used to be there, they used to be called eunuchs. And those are the things that these people want to teach us, Mr. Speaker. I remember once when we went to see the Pope as Catholic members of Parliament, he told us that when we come to Parliament, we should not leave our faith outside Parliament. We should always come in armed with our faith, legislate, remembering that we are Christians, we have our values, we have even our African values. They don't prescribe this kind of behavior. And as parents, Mr. Speaker, we must be very worried because these people are targeting our young people. Because this thing is infiltrating in our colleges, in our higher learning institutions, and this is the thing that they are trying to do. Remember, Mr. Speaker, in the last parliament, or maybe the 10th parliament, the 11th parliament, Mr. Speaker, there was a member who attempted to introduce a bill that was prescribing some of these things to protect the rights of people who want to marry people of the same sex. And Mr. Speaker, we realized that and we rejected it. So, Mr. Speaker, what the Supreme Court has done is like they are making judgment not for our society, not for this nation, disregarding everything, and they want they want us to believe that this ruling is for the right of these people. How do we recognize an amorphous group that is not even recognized in our laws, in our constitution? We cannot do that. The right of association, Mr. Speaker, you remember there was a group from South Nyanza that had demanded that they wanted to be recognized, that night runners be recognized as a sport in the Olympics. Mr. Speaker.
And you can see Honorable Karoli Omondi is laughing because he knows where those people come from.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and then many other groups will come on board and start demanding for their rights, that let us be recognized because we belong here, we belong this, and on, Mr. Speaker. And we continue like that, then we'll find ourselves wiped out from the face of the earth. If we cannot procreate, Mr. Speaker, then there will be no future generation that will come in after us. In Europe, Mr. Speaker, we are having the older generation. It's more than the younger generation, and they're having a very huge gap between the older and the younger people. So what we must do, Mr. Speaker, we must guard ourselves, we must protect our culture, we must protect our children, and Mr. Speaker, we must say no to anything that is going to destroy our values. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me a chance to speak on this motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Yakub Ado, MP for Bura constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this very important motion. I want to thank the member who initiated this motion. It's a very sad day for our great nation. Even for the essence of just talking about this topic is bad. I have seen Mheshimiwa Ngeno finding it difficult even to pronounce these bad names. So for me, even talking about it is bad. I'm a Muslim by faith, and in the Quranic version, chapter 16, verse 72 says, "And Allah has made for you of yourself spouses, and made for you from your spouses sons and daughters and grandchildren." I want to challenge anybody who is pursuing this dream to show us any offspring raised from this association. We can go further and further in terms of provision of chapters in every faith, be it Islamic, be it Christianity, that condemns and illegalizes that kind of association. I don't want even to mention the name. I want to condemn that decision by the Supreme Court on this issue and want to associate myself with the opinion of the minority of those judges. I want to loud on the same voice again His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of Uganda, for having taken that bold step. And I have heard that even Uganda, after he has just assented to that law, they got a very heavy downpour, a very heavy rainfall. Even for us in Kenya, I believe, as a Muslim, the many problems and challenges we are facing on this earth is because of such kind of vices which the West intend now to put into our midst. It is time we don't sit on the fence, We don't bury our heads in the sand. We come forward and challenge this vice that wants to be brought to our youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Karoli Omondi, MP for Suba South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And for the record, night running is one of the indigenous sports. Mr. Speaker, I rise to add my voice to this motion, and I would like to begin by stating that I firmly believe in the natural order of things, and that, like magnetism, opposites attract. And I also appreciate the genius of God in creating the instruments of affection and attraction between people of different gender and making them to have universal application and standards, if you know what I mean. But, Mr. Speaker, life has its own complications and contradictions. So does nature. If you remember the very smart people who drafted the American Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and the rest of them, they say that all men are created equal and each is endowed with certain inalienable rights, amongst them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet these men, with such elevated ideas and statements, owned slaves. There are many contradictions in the way human beings live and conduct themselves. So is in nature. This thing, I mean, the topic we are talking about, LGBTQ, if you look at those particular abbreviations,